welcome back, those who have joined. I would want you to inform your members or inform your colleagues or your comrades that class has already started. And today class, we are focusing on what we call lobbying, government and lobbying activities. So allow me to share my screen so then we can start our class. Allow me to share my screen so that we can start our class. Now that is my screen. I hope you can see. Nafisa, can you see the screen? Nafisa, unaweza kuona hiyo screen? Let's ask for another person. Kimeu, Mbasa Kimeu, can you see that screen?
Iko sawa.
Thank you. Now, let's start our class. And we are starting with, no, this topic is known as government and lobbying activities. So when we talk about government and lobbying activities, number one thing you should know about government and lobbying activities is that it is one of the strategic activities of PR. Government and lobbying activities is one of the strategic activities of PR. And we're going to start by saying, looking at the overview, and we're saying government and lobbying. When you talk about government and lobbying, these are two terms which are often used together when we talk about current affairs. Current affairs, these are things that are happening in the government and things that are given what we call the first priority in the government. Like right now, we have so many things happening in the government. There is what we call politics, as far as elections are concerned. There is the issue to do with infrastructure, economy, issues, such issues. So when you talk about government and lobbying activities, these are two different things. So we have the government and we have lobbying activities. And we have said lobbying is one of the strategic strategic activities of PR. So when you look at this topic will aim to describe and analyze the relationship between these two terms in such a way that they can be understood from the twin perspectives of politics and PR. So we are going to include government, we are going to talk about government, and we are also going to talk about lobbying. But also government needs lobbying. So we are going to look at who is a lobby, who are lobby, what is lobbying, and so on and so forth. So this analysis should provide insight into significant segment of PR practice that part which does not deal directly with market, which is usually called by one title, and which has lobbying inside it as a component. So therefore, we move directly to government and lobbying activities, and we are looking at what is lobbying. And we are saying that lobbying, it can be defined as what we call perspective activity to change public policy. It's a perspective activity to change public policy in favor of an organization by the groups of people who are not directly involved in the political process. So when you talk about lobbying, lobbying does not only exist in what? In the government. Lobbying does not only involve, is not only in the government sector. Lobbying also exists in organizations. And what is lobbying? We have said that lobbying is a persuasive activity. And this activity, which is persuasive, its purpose is to change public policy in favor of the organization or in favor of a group of people who are not directly involved in the political process. For example, let me give an example of infrastructure. Suppose you come from a village, or suppose you come from a place whereby the infrastructure is very poor. The road networks are very poor. And you have stayed there for a very long time, and you'd want the infrastructure of the road network to be improved. So what do? You will look for influential people. You will look for activists. And these activists are well connected with government officials. They are well connected with people like governors. They are well connected with people like who? Like MCA. They are well connected with people like senators and so on and so forth. And these people are going to push the agenda to these people, to the most prominent people, so that your road network, your infrastructure, or whatever problem you are going through can be solved. It can end up even in parliament, being discussed in parliament. It can end up being discussed in public, what we call them, public, what do you call it? Public, public domain. And so you realize that things are going to be done, or activities, or the development is going to be done. The development that you need as a community will actually be done as you so wish. Why? Because of this activity. So therefore, we are saying lobbying can be defined as a prospective activity to change the public policy in favor of the organization, in favor of the community, by the group of people. And this group of people, they do not necessarily have to be involved in the political process. So as defined in the literature and of carried out in perspective, it relates to groups which may want and it is government controlled. So in other words, let's go to point C, and we are saying that lobbying is done by all sorts of organized entities in all sectors of public life, by groups of all sizes and reputation. So the word is used to include what is known in literature as pressure groups. Remember, we have said that if you want some development in your community, for example, say you have poor road network, or the infrastructure is very poor, or you don't even have electricity, and you want the government to hear you out. You want the government to crop in and help improve the situation. Then you're going to use people like what we call the pressure groups. Pressure groups, they exert pressure into the government. They exert pressure into government officials, into people like MCAs. Those people, when they make decisions or when they talk, their matters are taken seriously, or the issues are taken seriously. Now, those pressure groups, those activists, are what we call the lobbies, because they are exerting pressure into the government. They are exerting pressure into what? They're exerting pressure into these officials. Excuse me, kidogo tu dakika moja. Sorry for that. So we are saying these people that exert pressure into the government, they are known as what we call lobbyists. They cause what we call they cause and they cause or they create pressure into the government and officials. And this will mean, and that means that meaning is extended to cover private companies and public funded bodies at schools, universities, and hospitals. So, in other words, organizations have got lobby. Organizations usually have got lobby. It doesn't necessarily have to be the government, but even organizations, like if you are in a service rendering organization or sector, we have lobby. The people who stand up, they meet the management and they talk to the management and they tell the management that we want salary increment. They face the management and tell the management we want you to improve on maybe issue to do with security. We want you to improve on issues like, for example, improve on sanitation and such things. So we can even have lobbies in an organization. They exert pressure into to the management so that something can be done. So groups, you're told, also seek to achieve the purpose for which their members came together. For example, groups can achieve the purpose of making profit, following a recreation, etc., etc. So we also have group lobby to ensure that government is at least neutral about their purpose and at best supportive. For example, right now, as we speak right now, there was an incident that happened along Forest Road where a lady was harassed by boda rider. We saw it was in the news. And this one brought about the government by having a very serious crackdown, boda crackdown. So that one has happened and it is still happening. As we talk right now, we have various groups of people. Like today when I was coming to work, I was listening to Radio Citizen and some boda riders were saying that the government should ease up because one mistake done by one person should not be generalized to be the one that was done by all boda. So therefore it should be eased up. It has even gone political. We had the who Raila Odinga saying that the government should take it easy on this on the issue to do with boda rider, because I think the police have taken that issue to the next level. So in other words, there is what we call a pressure group already has been formed. I am not so sure the pressure group, but there is always a pressure group whenever a situation of the sort happens to do what? To talk on behalf of these boda riders so that the government can do something about it. Initially, it was all the boda riders should register themselves afresh. And it came to a point that the government decided to waive what? To waive the fee that comes with the registration, so the registration fee. Why did the government do that? Of course, there must have been a lobby or lobby that talked or exerted pressure on the government to reduce the fee or to actually do away with it so that people can do what? So that people can register afresh, and these are the boda people. So lobbying, the practice of a PR specialism. Let's look at lobbying, the practice of PR specialism. And we are talking about, we are saying that lobbying has been defined as a persuasive activity by groups to influence government policy making. I think that one we have looked at it. It is the inside PR practice course. It's a communication-based activity. Lobbying is a communication-based activity, and this activity is centered on a group or organization which seek to persuade and negotiate with those of its stakeholders in the government on matters of opportunity and threat. So we are saying that these lobbies They do what? They negotiate with those of its stakeholders in the government on matters of opportunity and threat. So lobbying, again, it is done by individuals in one or two employment categories. So in other words, we have in-house lobbies, and in-house lobbies, they are usually employed by the organization or they're employed by an institution. And also, we also have what? Hired lobbies. An organization can decide to do what? To hire lobbies. It can decide to hire lobbies. So in-house lobbies are often known as public affairs. They are often known as public affairs. They are also known as what we call corporate communication managers. You hear of corporate communication managers. And they are in the staff. These people, they are actually employed by the organization. So in other words, when you talk about lobbyist, a lobbyist is a public relations practitioner, because you will find that they are sometimes called public affairs manager, corporate communication manager. You will hear of public relations and advertising manager. You will hear of all these people. They are called lobbyists. They are PR practitioners, but they are under the office of, they are PR officers, and they operate within the Department of PR. So these are PR people. Like, for example, if you go to so many government offices, we have an office known as mostly government offices. You find that we have corporate affairs office, and corporate affairs office and public affairs office. Talk about public affairs office. They deal with issues relating to the public. For example, in your community, you have realized that there is what we call electricity vandalism or transformer vandalism, whereby immediately a new transformer is put, then there comes bandits, or there comes what we call thieves, and they steal what we call the oil, transformer oil, and they vandalize those what we call those things or those materials or those transformers very well. So where do you complain? Do you go to the police station? Do you go to Kenya Power and Lightning Company, or where do you go? Yeah, you can go to police station, which is good. And again, you can decide to go to Kenya Power and Lightning Company, and you can air your view to this office called Public Affairs Office. And in this Public Affairs Office, they are going to take an action concerning the same. If you had video recorded this feeling, then you can take the matter to KPLC or even to police station. So in other words, when you're talking about public affairs office, it is an office that is created to deal with issues to do with public. Like, for example, if the transformer is stolen and you don't know who stole the transformer or who vandalized the transformer, you can report this to the Public Affairs Office at Kenya Power and Lightning Company. Then from there, they will know how they are going to handle that particular thing. So therefore, we ask ourselves, what do lobbyists do? What do they do? What does a lobbyist do? Remember, we have said, as far as an internal lobbyist is concerned, this is a PR practitioner. But this PR practitioner has been given several names, like corporate affairs officer, or what we call our corporate communication manager. These are PR practitioners. That's why I started by saying that lobbying is a strategic PR activity. So what do they do? What do these lobbyists do? So the task of lobbying can be grouped under 4 headings. Number 1, we are going to start with providing access to public policy makers. So once you have these people called lobbyists, remember, lobbyists are people who are well known. They have a very good connection with lawyers. They have very good connection with what we call ministers. They have very good connection with even the president. They have very good connection with people like MPs, MPs. and governors and senators. They have very good connection with all these powerful people. So therefore, when you talk about lobbying can be viewed as a specialist form of networking in the field of public policy. Making and access can be characterized as point of linkage between separate groups of actors in the field. So the provision of access results in the ability of the group for whom the lobbyists work. So if a lobbyist work for, maybe for example, for MCA or for a certain MCA, then that MCA can introduce him to other MCAs without, within a county or within a specific county. So in other words, the provision of access results in the ability of the group for whom the lobbyists work to, or makes it, or something of the sort. So access, when you talk about access to these very powerful people in the country, can be divided into two forms. Number one, we can have personal and individual access. Personal and individual access. That is the principal and the lobbyists meet the decision makers. For example, when you talk about personal and individual access, here is the principal and her lobby meet the decision maker. That is, if for example, this is Safaricom Kenya Limited, and you want the government to do something. This is now where the PR practitioner makes the arrangement necessary for Safaricom to meet maybe the governor, or for Safaricom to meet maybe the very influential people in the country. So when you talk about personal and individual access, the principal and the lobby, they make the decision, or they make it necessary, or they come up with a way in which they can meet personally and talk to the lobby. Number two is a personal and electronic. For example, you can you can make a call, you can email an influential people in the government. You can make a call to the governor, you can make a call to the MCA, you can make a call you can write an email to them, and so on and so forth. And this form does not matter as long as access is achieved. So you can access influential people through, you can meet them personally or individually, or you can make what we call calls, you can write them email, and so on and so forth. We move to something else. Number one, we have said that lobbies provide access to public policy makers. So they help an organization meet a policy maker. They help an organization meet, if at all you want to meet the president. A lobbyist can make it necessary for you. Maybe you want to meet a governor. The lobbyist can make it happen to you as an individual or as an organization. Number two, lobbies, they make representation. And when you talk about representation, they represent you. They represent your issue to the concerned person. If you want to access the most influential lawyer in the country, lobbies will make it. Maybe you have some issues. The lobbies will carry your issue and represent the organization. So they are representatives, in short. So once access has been gained, because access first of all has to be gained, representations have to be made. You have to be represented by a person, and this person might be an influential group, an influential person, and this influential person is the one that we are calling a lobbyist. So once access has been gained, representations have to be made, and this is in line with the preferences of most hard lobbyists who do not want to be in the firing line of sharp questioning from ministers and civil servants in policy areas where lobbyists are not experts. So one aspect of making representation or putting the case to decision makers is toward separate mention. So whenever or wherever the policy expertise comes from the argument that is not in favor of the group, must have several points. In other words, we are saying that whenever the policy expertise comes from, the argument that is not in favor of the group must have several qualities. Number one, it has to be intellectual coherent. It has to be demonstrated or to demonstrate public interest dimension. That if you are representing or you are sending the lobby to represent your issues, then your issues it needs to have the following qualities. It has to be intellectually coherent. It has to be to demonstrate public interest dimension. For example, you are at school and you want maybe water. The school is suffering a lot. They do not have water. And the only person who can make it happen is your governor, or maybe it is your MCA. So the lobby will represent your issue. But the issue that he is representing must be intellectually coherent. The issue that this lobby is representing to your MCA, it has to demonstrate a public interest dimension. For example, lack of water in school is a very serious issue. So it has to demonstrate a public interest dimension. It has to go with the prevailing piece of government policy. And lobbies have to show that there is the added value of a strengthened public interest in any argument by a minister or a civil servant. So these lobbies, they have to show that there is the added value of strengthened public interest. Lazima waonyeshe ya kwamba ile jambo ambalo linafaa lifanyike ni la muhimu sana na linahusu the public. So that is the make representation. Number 3, lobbies are also policy advisors. Lobbies are also policy advisors. Why are they called policy advisors? Remember, when you talk about lobbies, they are specialized in this. We have lobbies who have met lawyers. We have lobbies who have met what we call the government officials like the CS, cabinet secretary. We have lobbies who have very good connection with what we call CEOs of other companies, business moguls, and so on and so forth. So you're going to realize because of this job, they have done it for a very long time. They have met so many experts. They become an expert. They advise you. For example, if you are an organization and you want to take a legal action against something, and you call a lobbyist will be able to tell you this is how it works. This is the process of maybe the process of going through this particular issue. So many lobbyists are experts in their field, and they have usually worked for a business trade. They have usually worked for maybe for a trade union, for a pressure group, for a very long time. And you know, when you work for something or someone for a very long time, you tend to do what? You tend to know the way they work. So being a lobbyist, it gives the post holder an overview of the organization that he represents, and the policy knowledge is relatively easy to come by. These people can advise you as an organization. These people can advise you as an individual. These people can advise you as a government. These people can advise you as a parastatal because they have the knowledge. They have been in the field for a very long time. They can tell you the process of how you can acquire, maybe for example, if you're looking for a license, how you can acquire a very, or how you can access people like influential lawyers and very good lawyers in the country and so on and so forth. Then we go to number 4. Lobbies act as administrative support group, or lobbies, they act as administrative support group leaders. So lobbying is popularly perceived as an activity. And this activity it involves mixing with high status individuals. For example, they meet with very strong influential people. Sometimes they may meet even the president. Sometimes they meet the deputy president. Sometimes they meet even other presidents from other countries and other ministers from other countries. And the great majority of lobbying work is mundane and does little to quicken the past. So it's akin to background research. So they do a lot of research in the sense that developing somebody else's case is certainly that once idea of fact finding, once they have the idea of fact finding, then they will be able to do to look for information. They will be able to look for information and advise you accordingly. So lobbies, they are sometimes, or they most of the time act as administrative support. They can do some work for you. They can do some research for you. They can do some what we call, they can even run errands for you. So lobbying, number four, any question up to that point? Is there any question up to that point? And I don't understand why people are not joining the class. I can only see 11 people in this class. Is there any question? If there is no question, let's look at lobbying side. So when you talk about lobbying side, lobbying relies on personal contact. It relies on personal contact with what we call senior public post holders. Also at what we call at private meetings, of course, and also high levels of description about what we say at such meetings and confidentially on information exchanges and any other agreements of conflict. So this helps to explain why there is tension between some lobbyists and other PR practitioners, because you find that lobbyists, they have a lot of information, while PR practitioners sometimes may not have the information that lobbyists have. And this one creates a lot of tension. So these lobbyists point to the public in they point to the word public in PR. So it relies on media relations and use of mass demonstration outside parliament, outside parliament, public relations, so on and so forth. So public displays are a sign of weak power, exaggeration, and influence. So that they have to be anyway. This paragraph, I think I need to work on this paragraph. So maybe we can look at something else like background, titles, and reputation of lobbyists. And here we are saying that a significant number of lobbyists were previously involved in government as either research assistants to MP, to what we call financial party workers, sometimes to civil servants, or MP, members of parliament. So the implication is that lobbyists are likely to be very familiar with policy processes. Remember, we said because of their experience They have worked with so many influential people in the government, so they can advise you. So we are saying that lobbyists are likely to be very familiar with policy processes and persons, and that their principals employ them because of this knowledge and their contracts. That's why you find that most lobbyists, they become members of parliament. Most lobbyists, they become assistants to MPs. Most lobbyists can become financial party workers and so on and so forth, because they have worked with these people so closely, such that they feel that they need to employ the lobbyists in this organization. They have a lot of knowledge. So the implication of employing now, so the implication is that you could not lobby without knowing the policy making system. You cannot be a lobbyist without knowing how things work. You cannot be a lobbyist. You cannot advise. You cannot cancel an organization. You cannot act like an intermediary between an organization and another until you know the policy making system and personal part. So therefore, in-house lobbyists, they work under titles. In-house lobbyists, remember we said that these are people called, these are simply public relations officers. In-house lobbyists work under titles such as, you can have public affairs office or public affairs officer, government relations manager. We also have corporate relations, a manager or officer, parliamentary liaison. While when you talk about hired lobbyists, they work for firms. Hired lobbyists, we have hired lobbyists and we have in-house. In-house ni wale wanafanyia organization kazi. They are not hired. They are in-house. We also have hired lobbyists, whereby an organization, if it doesn't have lobbyists, it goes outside and hired, or it does work. Sometimes it can have lobbyists, but these lobbyists are not specialized. They are not specialized in a particular area. So if they are not specialized in a particular area, then it means that they will have to hire lobbyists that are specialized in a particular area. So hired lobbyists work for firms, calling themselves. For example, they might go with titles like public affairs consultant, corporate communication specialist, PR consultant, or political and regulatory advisor. They can call themselves like that. So lobbying can be viewed as highlight zone. Can be viewed as highlight zone, which attracts with self-fear about a powerful particular interest being privileged of a public interest. So in other words, let's look at what we call, does lobbying achieve its goal? Does lobbying achieve its goal? Now that we hire lobbyists to go and represent a company or represent issues concerning a company to maybe a very influential person in the country, do they achieve this goal? That's the question. So it's very difficult to know whether they achieve their goals or not. It's very difficult to know that. And the difficulty is that the question is dependent on the larger issue of the larger issue of the group effectiveness. If the group or the lobbies are very effective, then simply it means that they are going to achieve their goals. We can have what we call lobbies that are not effective, and it will simply mean that they will not be able to achieve the goal. And that is it. So you're even told that we've finished that this effectiveness at the level of good individuals. In other words, we are saying that for this effectiveness, in other words, we are saying that lobby, for something to be effective, for these things to be effective, for lobbying activities to be very effective, then we must have lobbies who have got some characteristics, or attributes. So we have these attributes Number one, for you to be a good lobbyist, you need to have attributes like number one, recognizing that lobbying is a mutual activity and that in return for access. So you must recognize, you have the attribute of recognize that as you conduct your lobbying activity, that it is a mutual activity. Mutual simply means you cannot do lobbying alone. You have to involve various people. You have to involve the organization. You have to involve the most influential person, and you will have to ensure that the issue that is represented to this influential person by an organization, it is dealt with properly. So you need to recognize that lobbying is a mutual activity. Number two, in decision making, you need to be an expert in decision making. If you cannot make decision as a lobbyist, then I don't think that one will be able to, or you'll be able to survive very well in that particular position. The next point is you must have the ability to master a brief and present it in terms of a feeling. In other words, when you talk about a brief is simply, you can be given a summary on anything. You can even be given a summary of what we want you to achieve. You must also be given a summary of your roles and responsibilities. So you must have the ability to master the brief, because before you, say for example, you are an external lobbyist and an organization wants to hire you to do something for them or to advise them. So let's just say to do something for them. Number one, the company will give you a brief, just a brief of what we do, just a brief of what the organization is involved in. Then you will have to read that and the organization inside out, so that if you're going to represent the organization to a minister, or maybe to a governor, or maybe to an MCA, you have already mastered the brief. Because when you go there, you don't say, I am a lobbyist. You just say that I am a corporate affairs officer of maybe, for example, Safaricom Limited, Safaricom Care Limited, and I have had something of the sort. So you must have the ability to master a brief. And also, apart from mastering the brief, you can be able to present it in terms appealing to the listener. That after you master the brief, you can be able to do what? To present it. You are presenting it as if it is yours completely. Remember, HAPA, you have been hired by the organization. So you are representing the organization to the MCA or to the governor. So therefore, when you represent the organization to the governor, you don't say, I am a lobbyist and I am representing Safaricom. You will appear, no, what you do is that you say that you work for Safaricom Kenya Limited. And this is what you present the brief to the governor. You present the brief to even the public in a manner that these people can be able to understand where you're coming from. So in other words, you are told you must have the ability to master a brief and present it in terms appealing to the listener and a sense of timing about the changes of policy making. So in other words, again, you must have the sense, because policies change. If a certain organization or the government changes its policy on something, you must be very alert that a certain policy has changed. Things are now not going to run the way they used to. There is a policy that has changed concerning a particular issue. And now that is marks the end of today's lesson. What is remaining there is chapter summary. Chapter summary. Any questions? I can see some people joining us this side. Do you have any questions? Because you don't have any questions, let me say something. Number one, next week we are going to have our final lesson. Next week we'll be having our final lesson. That is next week on Friday. And then next week, but one, you'll be having your final class. That is part 2. Then from there, we need to the exam. What am I saying? I'm saying next week, we are going to have our final lesson. I'm going to combine topic 8 and topic 9. So I'll teach them, all of them at once. And that one we call it the end of the semester. You can call it the end of the semester or end of the syllabus. After which you will be expected to do what? You'll be expected to sit for a CAT. That is next week, part 1. After you sit for the CAT, then you will have to wait for the exam. I think by then, timetable will be out, and you'll be told when you'll be doing your public relations CAT, among many other units. So next week, we are going to have our final class. Apart from that, allow me to share the password for today's register before we proceed. The attendance, the password for the attendance, which I'm going to share here. And there's some people who have asked questions here. You're asking whether lobbies can influence a court case. Can lobbies influence a court case? Okay, I've shared the password. The password is there. You can start taking your register. You can start taking your register. Now, okay, when you talk about lobbies, whether they can influence a court case, I don't think so. The only person who can influence a court case is the lawyer. If you are a lawyer who can influence a court case, once something is in the court, you cannot influence because court works independently. You cannot influence their decision. A lobbyist cannot influence a court case because courts have been given the freedom to work independently without influence, outside influence, or even inside influence. They are not. You cannot influence a court case as a lobbyist. So let's move on. Today's activity. Topic 7 notes. Topic 7 notes have already been opened. You can download them as of now. Number 2, there are learning activities here. You're told read learning activity number 1 is read any other supplementary reading material outlining government and lobbying activities. Then number 2, you're told discuss for or against. Does lobbying achieve its goals? Discuss for or against. Does lobbying achieve its goals? Then you're supposed to share that in the provided discussion forum. And lastly, there is a quiz 7. And all these activities will expire exactly at 2. So the remaining time frame, make sure that you do those activities and call it a day. Make sure that you do those activities and you call it a day. Some people are joining now and the class is ending now. Kuna watu wanajoin saa hii na class is. So what you are left with is to listen to the recording. If you are joining us now, what is left for you is to wait until I upload the recording and then you can listen to that recording. So I've looked at WhatsApp and I've seen that people had problems joining in. So that one is a problem that I could not fix, a problem to do with network and internet. But I can see some people are joining now. I've already shared the password for the attendance. Kindly use that password to do what? To take your register. There are also, we can also have someone share the password to those groups. I mean, to to share the password of the WhatsApp group so that others can start taking the register. For example, I can see Angela Ashley. She has already taken the register. You can see Charles Mpive. You can see Esther Vanja, Gishohi. I can see Frida Kachensai. You can see John Alenitu, Jacinta Juma Akieno, and many others have already taken the register. That is to confirm that the password is working properly. So kama hakuna swali, let's go and do those activities until we meet again. That is next week for the final topic. Let's meet next week for the final topic. Have a very and a lovely day. Have a very good day and a lovely day. Until we meet next time.
Ramgasha speaking. Wanna speak me?